Welcome back to day 28 of 31 monsters in 31 days. So let's find out who we're making today. A gargoyle. All right, let's get started.
While we're sketching out the plan and making the basic blob shape that all the monsters in this series are built off of, I'm going to give you a bit of a history of gargoyles and why I included them on my monster list. If you want to see slower step-by-step instructions on how to make this basic blob form, check out this video. For details on how I do my paper mache, check out this video. Both are linked in the description. So, a gargoyle is a monster inspired by a water spout, which can be a little bit confusing. Your first thought when I say the word gargoyle might be the stone creatures that look over France from atop the Cathedral de Notre Dame. Or at least that's my first thought. In architecture, a gargoyle is a water spout, typically in the shape of a grotesque creature designed to carry rainwater off a roof and away from the building. Gargoyles are most commonly associated with European Gothic cathedrals, but the idea of creature-shaped waterspouts can be traced back to ancient Greece and Rome. In addition to the very practical function of moving water away from the sides of buildings, there are various theories as to why the stone gargoyles on European Gothic cathedrals were such strange and scary figures. Some suggest that they were guardians meant to protect these big churches from evil spirits. Others think that they represent demons banished through exorcism, or were symbols used to communicate the idea of earthly evils to the congregants who would have been mostly illiterate when the cathedrals were built. Of course, we don't know for sure, but we do know that these weird little guys have captivated our imaginations. The first popular instance of a stone architectural gargoyle that comes to life was in a short story called The Maker of Gargoyles by Clark Ashton Smith. This story was published in a magazine called Weird Tales in 1932 and is about a master stone carver who carves gargoyles so lifelike that they begin attacking people. After that, a few other gargoyle monsters appeared in stories, but they were really launched into pop culture in the 1970s by an episode of Doctor Who, and more importantly, by the first edition of the tabletop role-playing game Dungeons & Dragons. I can't think of any other monster that started out as a piece of architecture and was brought to life in media. The gargoyles are just really cool. I wish we still included art like this on modern buildings, so I had to include gargoyles on my monster list. So my first order of business is to use some air dry clay to make a couple teeth, 2 eyes, 2 horns, and these little claws on top of his wings here. I'll need these to be all dry before I can start building my sculpture. This is DOS brand clay. This clay has a lot of paper fiber in it, and I really recommend a paper clay for a project like this. I'll leave a link for this clay and my other supplies in the video description. A good trick I like to use when I'm trying to make 2 things that are exactly the same size is to make sure I'm starting each with the same amount of clay. I do this by rolling my clay into a ball. It's really easy to use the eyeball method to cut a sphere in half, and then you're setting yourself up for success to make 2 horns that are exactly the same size because you've got the same amount of clay to make each. Now I'm going to set these aside to dry. I'm using some cardboard to make the gargoyle's wings. Because this guy is made of stone, I think it's okay if his wings are a little chunky. They don't need to be thin and transparent like a fairy's wings, say. I've never tried this technique before, but I think it will work. I'm cutting my 2 wing shapes out of cardboard, making sure the corrugations are running up and down the wings like this. I also prepped some fingers for the wings off camera. I cut these out of foam board. I cut a set for each wing, front and back, but I'm not going to attach these right now. We'll just set these aside. Next, I'm getting my cardboard wing wet at the sink. Then I'm using my little roller to squish down some of the corrugations in select areas. When the cardboard is wet like this, it almost has a leathery texture, so I can create some folds in the wings, then use a couple spring clamps to hold them in place at the top while the cardboard dries. The next day, my air dry clay bits are all dried. I'm using this nail file I like to smooth out a few bumps in the horns. I'll leave a link to these files in the supply list, but if you do this yourself, don't forget to protect your lungs while sanding. We're hot gluing our horns onto our blob shape here, and then I want to make it look like the horn is growing out of the skin, so I'm making a little lip with some paper towel. I can't use my regular paper mache paper for this because it will either rip or buckle if I try to form it into a circle around the horn. So I'm using a brush to wet my paper towel all the way through with paper mache paste. Then I'm twisting up another little scrap of paper and folding it inside the first like a little taco. Then I'm wrapping it around the base of the horn and using some small bits of paper to blend in the torn edge. I'm making a couple more paper towel tacos to make a couple lower eyelids. I'm rolling up some gluey paper towel to make a little tube that I can form into a little nose. On top of that, I'll stack up a couple more little rolls of paper towel to make some nose ridges. I'm using more paper towel to make one big upper eyelid, then I'm blending that into the sculpture with some brown paper. Then I thought he could use a couple ridges on his forehead, so I'm using some more paper towel to make those, and I'm covering them all with paper mache too. As the final bit of his face, I'm hot gluing his air dry clay teeth onto the blob, then using some paper towel to make a big upper lip that lets the bottom of the fangs poke out just a bit. I'll blend that all in with some paper mache and set that aside to dry. My wings are nice and dry now, so I can take off the clamps. These have dried really nicely. I'm peeling the paper off of the front and back of the foam board fingers that I prepped earlier, and I'll trim these to fit within the folds we've created. I'll hot glue this into place and repeat with all the little wing bits on the front and back of each wing. When all that has been constructed, I'll use my craft knife to make a little flat spot on the top of the wing so that I can glue on this little air dry clay claw. When I've assembled both wings, of course, I'm covering each of them with paper mache. Note that bit of paper towel around the claw at the top. I used the same technique here that I did around the horns. Here's everything all dry. Oh, I found his nose was looking a little flat, so off camera, I just built up his nose a little bit with just another layer of paper towel sausage on top of the original one. I'm really loving how these wings turned out. I think they look a little blocky and architectural, but still organic, which is kind of perfect for a gargoyle. Finally, I hot glued his wings to his body, covered the joint with paper mache, and set it aside to dry one more time before paint. I want to do a stone effect paint job on this guy. This is going to start with a base coat of gesso. This is just regular white gesso that I've added a bit of black paint to get this nice stony base color. Some folks were asking why sometimes I use gesso and sometimes I don't, and that decision really boils down to the paint effect I'm going for. In this case, I know I want a really full coverage paint finish as opposed to the transparent finish of, say, my Frankenstein project. For that reason, I am base coating in gesso, and I'm mixing in some paint so that this first coat is closer to the final color I'm going for, so if I miss a spot later, it's not going to be noticeably white. When all this is dry, I'm mixing up a DIY stone texture medium. This is some gesso, a bit of black paint, a splash of paper mache glue, and then some baking soda. It always takes more baking soda than I think. The trick is just to keep adding it bit by bit until you can see the grittiness in the paint. I'm using a crusty old brush and a stippling motion to apply the texture. I'm being quite heavy-handed here. Definitely don't use your favorite brush for this technique. When all that's dry, now I don't always do this, but I've been having a bit of an issue with some of my paint lifting when I do a wash, and I want to put a black wash on this, so I'm locking on that stone texture by brushing on a light coat of my paper mache paste. I added a bit of cornstarch to this, which acts as a mattifier. I don't want my stone to be shiny at all. After about an hour, I'm going in with a black wash. This is some watered down acrylic paint. I'm applying it generously with a soft brush, then wiping it back with a damp paper towel. The paint sits in all the texture of the sculpture, and this gives a really nice aged and weathered effect to our stone finish. Finally, I'm gluing a bit of black felt onto the base of the sculpture as a finishing touch. And here's our finished gargoyle. I'm pretty happy with how he turned out. I really like the wings and the stone paint finish. His face looks a little bit goofier than I was aiming for, but meh, I think it's okay. It's growing on me. Give this video a like if you think I did a good job on him. If you think I did a bad job, tell me what you would have done differently in the comments. Don't forget, I've still got 3 more monsters to make. You're not going to want to miss them, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss tomorrow's video. Share and hype this video if you feel like showing me some extra love. I so appreciate it. Again, thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you tomorrow.